Hi, this is Terry Farrell, Dax from Deep Space Nine, and welcome to Random Trek.
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your time-hopping captain, Christopher Ingle, joined as always, my first officer, the all-powerful but apparently aging Commander Brennan, the mystical Mar. Brennan, how does it feel to be omnipotent?
Difficult to say.
He does know everything, ladies and gentlemen. He corrects me all the time, and I appreciate him for it. But today, we are going to Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 7, Monsters. Brennan, how'd you feel about this episode going in?
Well, I remembered this episode from watching the series when it was coming out, and it's an interesting stuff.
Yeah, some stuff that I would never have gauged about our captain. That is are really interesting. But let's get into this episode so we can kind of touch on these issues. So, in the episode prior, Picard got run over. He got hit by a car. He is injured and was taken to Dr. Teresa, her clinic. And
Injured, by the way, by Dr. Soong.
Yes, injured by Dr. Soong. And they're checking on him and trying to figure out what they need to do. And so what they decide is, okay, whatever's going on is going on in his mind. We need to get in there and check what's going on. And so Tallinn goes and uses a piece of technology to connect herself to Picard's psyche so she can check into it. So inside of Picard's mind, he's reliving a memory from his childhood. And meanwhile, when we do see Picard talking, he's talking to a counselor. I believe it looks like a commander. And he's talking to him in Picard's ready room. And they're chatting back and forth, and typical psychobabble, I don't like being analyzed, this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, Tallinn is going through what she's going through his mind. What we find is we find Picard kind of in a dungeon, kind of a dungeon-like thing. And it's really scary. It's a really scary place. Something's coming to get them. Something's coming to get them.
Very fantasy.
Very fantasy based, right? Yeah. What we find out is that Picard is reliving in his mind a memory of his childhood.
Yes.
He was playing with his mother, and his mother said, let's go very quickly, very suddenly. And she drags him out of the room and takes him downstairs into these caverns, these catacombs or caverns. And they're saying, we've got to escape him. We've got to escape him. And as they're running, young Picard in the flashback gets caught in a board. He gets caught and he can't move. And his mother keeps running, leaving him behind. But as we go through the mind, we find out that the monster that is coming is not actually a monster, but Picard's father, who also is playing the psychologist,
and also the mental illness that's following his mother.
So what we find out basically is that Picard's mother was suffering from a mental illness.
We don't know exactly what, but we get the idea.
And to protect her, he locks her in her room. Locks her in there. She can't get out. It's to keep her safe. But the last thing we see, and they touch on it later, that's not the total end of that story, but in another episode they do touch on it. So we'll move on from there, but there's a little more to this story.
Darkly.
Something that Picard is holding on to.
Yeah,
but he does manage to wake up from the coma that he's in. And Tallinn reveals to him that she is actually Romulan and may be Laris's ancestor. Picard kind of guesses that Q might have a personal stake in this trial that's going on now. And he goes to Guinan and says, look, you're the only person who has the power to summon a Q. I know you know what to do. Help me. There is an Illyrian ritual in which to do that. Over a bottle, literally over a bottle of whatever liquid is in there, they can summon a Q. And she does the
Almost a
ritual.
genie in a bottle kind of thing.
Right. She does the ritual, but it fails. Meanwhile, during that time, everything, an earthquake, it looks like an earthquake happens. Bottles are crashing, and it looks like it doesn't work. Well, a man comes down, wanting a drink, and we find out he's an FBI agent, and he has video of Picard beaming in from La Serena.
And that episode we've covered.
We have covered that episode. That is true. Meanwhile, Rios is falling for Teresa. It's so cute. Those two are cute together.
And her son is adorable, by the way.
His son has what I will argue is the best line of the episode. I'm going to go touch everything.
Yes, as kids do.
They beamed aboard La Serena to prove that he's from the future. And he also, what are you, an alien? No, I'm from Chile.
Yep, I only work in outer space.
I only work in outer space, referencing Kirk in Star Trek 4. But he basically confesses that to her. Meanwhile, Raffi and Seven also discovered that the ship's computers were sabotaged with Borg encryption, and they are able, through Seven's work, to track Agnes. What they find is that Agnes is doing things, or the Borg Queen is taking over Agnes and is doing things to get endorphins, which allow the Borg nanoprobes to spread quicker.
Yeah.
So Jurati is losing control. We see a video, or actually a scene of her at a bar, and she breaks a window. She physically, with her hands, breaks a window, building those endorphins. And so they are on the track to find her before we have a new Borg Queen.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. All right. The main part of this, I think, that I want to touch on is Picard's past, and that he's still holding on to this.
Oh, yeah.
All the 7 years that we saw Picard, minus the Locutus stuff, we see a very stalwart and strong captain. What did you think of seeing this chink in his armor, that there is something there?
Well, if you go back to the episode Family, for Next Generation, this kind of explains, in a way, why he and his brother has such a messed up relationship. You can see some of that, and the idea that his mom was suffering from some undiagnosed mental illness, that it sounds like, we don't know this, but it sounds like he never got the help she needed. Maybe because his father was such a stubborn, old-fashioned man that maybe he didn't believe in that. We know of his disdain for technology, his disdain for a modern way of living. It's possible that he didn't believe that mental health was a big deal, which of course is a huge mistake. And getting to see more of Picard as a little boy, the idea that in order to become the stalwart captain, he had to build a lot of barriers emotionally, and that's why he doesn't really like to talk about his personal life. In the Next Generation, he never wanted to talk about it. He always wanted to keep things at a distance. And now we get some context as to why.
When we consider, too, right off the bat, we see his disdain for children. Doesn't that seem to make a little more sense, too, that if he's hating the child that he was for what
Good
happened,
point. Good point.
That's why he doesn't hate children. And yet, the way that his mother treated him and the connection between him and his mother
Yeah.
also shows that when it came down to it, remember when he was trapped in the turbolift with those 3 kids, how he was able to not only keep calm as a captain, but to talk with them and to help with them and to sing with them.
You know,
And
let's sing a song. Let's,
the stuff that I would imagine his mother doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So definitely it does put some perspective to him. But also this trauma or this need to want to save everyone, to do the best you can and to try
Good
and leave no
point.
one behind.
Good point.
All of this digs at him. Add to it the Borg stuff, which we get a small taste of when Tallinn first gets in his mind.
Oh, yeah,
You
sure.
hear echoes of the past, including I am Locutus of Borg,
Oh, yes.
which is funny because he remembers it all. Like being trapped and he can't do anything. He remembers it all. So he lives with that. But not just that, but other scenes too are I think there were 3 quotes that I could definitively pick out. The I am Locutus of Borg.
Mhm.
His speech to the Prime Minister from The Hunted. And also,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and also his speech to Q, where he would rather die as the man he was than the man he sees in front of him, or the man he's become, from Tapestry.
Yes.
All of those things play into this personality of him, and I wonder if these were chosen as echoes because they are prevailing themes in the psyche of one Jean-Luc Picard.
Yes.
Oh, see, this is so good.
And
Give me a necklace.
we have to discuss that really the best parts of this episode are Picard and his father, and particularly we have to shout out James Callis, who plays his dad, who many of you might recognize as Dr. Baltar in Battlestar Galactica. Those scenes are magnificent. They're played so very well between these 2 great actors. And we've only really seen Picard's father once in Tapestry, in Next Generation. This is some great stuff between the 2 of them, and we'll get into some of the real world things in a minute. But that part of the story, I think, of this episode is the most compelling.
Oh, absolutely. By far, and the revelation, although I kind of figured it, not this time, but the first time I saw it, I kind of figured he was something to that. And
I figured, yeah.
But I gotta say too, he played a very convincing counselor. He was playing him really well.
An obnoxious counselor.
Well, you know what though?
Some counselors have to be.
I would imagine Deanna doing similar things.
Probably.
We never knew Deanna to actually like psychoanalyze and counsel the captain. It was always advice when the captain needed it. But that he reveres that. He loves that. Think back to Nemesis when he says, Deanna, you've been my conscience and my guide. So I don't think he hates counselors. But the thing we're facing too is that this is also after all of those events.
And this is also being more probing than Deanna ever was.
Right. It's got him on the back foot. He was always in control. Deanna is emotional and able to connect. But if this guy is his father and that representation of a monster and someone that was always bringing him down, and this is what's funny too. I think back to Robert saying, "Father always loved you more." Father, the saint Jean-Luc Picard, he resented him from Robert's perspective. Their father adored Picard.
But from Picard's perspective, his dad didn't.
Right. But, and again, think of it, knowing what we know about what goes down with his mother and why it happens.
Oh
Maybe
boy.
as a father, he was softer than Picard realizes because he knew the trauma that happened. He knew what the boy was feeling.
Yes, his dad remains a bit of a mystery.
Yeah. It really does. And for a long time, I don't know, I kind of thought of his father more like Robert. I would have thought Robert and him were more alike, but this gives a slightly softer edge. And he could have been furious with Picard for everything, and he never, at least in the 2 episodes that we see these flashbacks here,
It
never
sounds
doesn't
like
seem to be.
he was emotionally maybe kind of distant in a way.
Yeah, probably.
Difficult
And
to say.
well,
Difficult
you
to
see the
say.
death, or you see the death of your wife. Maybe you will be.
And also, Picard's perspective on his father
Mhm.
may not be the entire truth because as human beings, that's what we do. We see certain things and maybe forget about other things.
With the connection too between Picard and his mother, maybe also seeing a lot of the mother in Picard. Maybe also that's why he takes a stronger liking compared to Robert.
And he's a lot like his mom. He's a dreamer.
Mhm.
He's always dreamed of going out there. Even though we don't see Picard play very much, when he gets into Dixon Hill, he really gets into it. That's his mother's personality coming out, I think.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That sense of fun that he does have.
Yeah, and there's a charm to him, and it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love that we get to go a little into his psyche here. I really appreciate that.
It
That
really
touch with
does inform a lot of the things he does.
right.
Yeah. The other storylines are interesting, but it's really the bit with Picard and his father
Right.
that really makes this episode work.
Mm-hmm. This is definitely the focus on that.
And I love Rios, by the way.
I adore Rios
I
too.
absolutely adore Rios. I love the bits with him and Teresa. It's just great stuff.
Mm-hmm. He is the character in this whole series that I was sad when he didn't come back. I appreciate the
Good
closure
point.
they gave to his character,
Mm-hmm.
but I still am sad because I liked him. I really enjoyed him. How I still don't get how he became a captain. I mean, he was a
Good
captain,
point.
but how he
Good
became a
point.
Starfleet captain, I have no idea.
Mm.
But I like him and the depth in him, and there's a tenderness and a kindness, and it's quite beautiful.
Yeah, and Teresa really ends up being quite helpful in this episode.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's
And of
fabulous.
course, Tallinn is great as well. So
The back to back they do, or the tete a tete that they do in Spanish.
yes,
I love her feistiness. Like
yes.
she definitely reminds me of a strong Latina woman. And
Mm-hmm.
just in general, like this is her place, her territory, it's her terms.
I'm the boss.
I'm the boss, yes. And she basically says that.
Yes,
This is my
exactly.
clinic.
Exactly.
What are you doing? Yeah.
I think maybe if I have any criticism about the story, I don't think Seven and Ralphie's story is really that interesting in this episode.
You know what? When we reviewed the end of season 1, I said it there.
Mm.
I don't understand the sudden relationship between the two of them. I'm not
I
opposed.
100% agree with you.
I'm not opposed to a relationship.
No.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
But we need to earn that. They had never met each other.
Yeah, they never did.
What is this?
Yes, they never had any scenes together in season 1.
Now, they do make a good pair, and this is one of the reasons that I would love to have a Star Trek legacy.
Yeah, I think that they are not a great romantic pair. But they are a great pair as just in terms of just as characters.
Yeah. And they do play off of each other really well. And they feel
Season
like
3 really goes there.
it does. And they do feel
It
like an
does.
old married couple, and not in a necessarily negative way. They know each other.
But yeah, they give them, I think, better storylines in season 3.
Yes, so much so. And Seven. Seven definitely in season
Oh, very
3,
much.
by
Very
far
much.
as the first officer is way better. And Raffi dealing with the issues that she has.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Raffi, see, yeah, we've talked about season 3 ad nauseum before.
Yeah.
I love season
I
3,
mean,
and it just builds.
but yeah, I don't buy the romance between them, but I do like them as a team.
I think part of what helps that is that they filmed season 2 and 3 back to back. This was
Good
during
point.
COVID. This was
Good
during
point.
COVID times, so they had filmed them back to back. So the relationship that we see and the development we see of the characters in season 3 is just a natural continuation from 2. Same
Good point.
writers, same. So
Good
I
point.
like it. I enjoy it.
But this episode, they don't really have much to do.
Right, they don't, but they do important things like let's get her before there's a newborn queen, and
Mm-hmm.
we assume we know what's going on, but we really don't.
Yep.
So, all right, final thoughts on this episode.
Well, there are a couple of behind the scenes little details that you may mention as far as continuity, but there's also a big one involving the character of Picard.
Right.
So I don't know which you wanted to go with. I mean, obviously the Anton Chile that I work in aerospace, that's a great Star Trek 4 reference. And there's a few other connections, but the one that really stands out is how Patrick Stewart felt about this episode. Because as he has revealed, his relationship with his own father was not very good. And the episode resonates with him because he's been there in real life. And then, of course, he didn't learn until many years later. In the case of his dad, was suffering PTSD as a soldier in World War II.
Yep.
So there is a real world sort of connection here.
On that, I really recommend to any fan of Patrick Stewart, check out his memoir, Making It So.
Oh, yes.
It was absolutely fabulous. I listened to it in audiobook earlier last year. I commute to my job, an hour and a half one way, an hour and a half back. So I had a lot of time, and so I listened to a lot of this kind of stuff. And he does talk in detail about that relationship growing up, and as well as his acting career and all of that goes with it. But that especially, yes, I highly recommend it. Listen to it. You get to meet.
We can understand the PTSD his dad had, because if any of you out there have seen Christopher Nolan's film Dunkirk, Patrick Stewart's dad was one of the soldiers that in real life was there during that event.
Yep.
And if you've seen that movie, you know what things they had to deal with. And you can understand why somebody would end up mentally ill because of that.
Right. And I also really like that this show helps to take the shiny veneer off of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we look at Star Trek as this pinnacle and this ideal, especially in the TNG era, this near perfect place. And with the exception of the Dominion War, TNG especially, like those 7 years, nothing crucially detrimental beyond the Borg happens. It's always nice and peaceful, and they always manage to figure it out. And it's a little idealistic, not in a bad way, but it is. This takes a little bit of that away, and we show that things are not always perfect. Mental illness is still a thing. We still have to struggle as human beings.
And you're still going to have people who are stubborn as Maurice.
Right. And we
who
still carry
doesn't
baggage.
doesn't
Right.
didn't really ever let go of that baggage, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I like what this does. It makes Star Trek, I think, even more relatable.
Yeah. And now the only tricky thing about it is just because this is not an episodic show.
Right.
This is you need to watch the whole thing to get the story. I'd say this one stands on its own. So there's still a lot where it's not really a watch this one episode.
Right.
But then you'll be like, what's going on? So
Mhm.
it's you want to watch the whole series.
Right. I feel that way about like later seasons of DS9. Like you kind of got to watch them all to really get what's going on. And I'm neither for or against arcs or
Yeah,
episode by
like
episode.
Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds has shown us
Mhm.
that the episodic formula still works.
It does, but I'm not opposed to a like like a TNG or original series where for the most part it was what's going to happen this week. I'm not
Yeah.
opposed to that either. So, take your poison, but if you're going to choose to go into this, you got to do it all to get the whole thing. All right. Well, our schedule is about to get a little wonky. So, next week, Commander Mar is on leave. He's on leave for a
Not
weekend.
here.
Huh?
I should be here.
Oh, you should be here. I thought you was on leave.
I may be on leave. We'll see.
All right. Well, then what we'll do is we'll hit the randomizer. We're going to go back to Enterprise. We get to go to Enterprise. We get to go around the horn again. So yeah, we'll go into Enterprise. The week after that is an interesting weekend for us because it is the release of a brand new. We don't get to call it a Star Trek movie, but it is. It's a long trek, Section 31. And hopefully, Brendan and I can find the time to see it on release day. So that weekend, we can record something on this. It'd be interesting. So that's the plan, hopefully, is to do that. And then the week after, we go to our regular movie night where we will be looking at The Hunt for Red October.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
One of my favorite films.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Here we go.
Oh,
So
boy.
Enterprise randomizer, Enterprise for next week. Season 2. I like this one. Episode 2, Carbon Creek.
Oh, yeah.
I like this one.
Oh, all right. All right.
I love when they do these. Voyager did one, Enterprise did one. I like these every so often. These are nice. This is good. It's good. All right. So Carbon Creek next week. Hopefully Section 31 the week after, and then Red October. Brennan, where can the people find you?
Well, you can still find me on X as it currently stands. That may change soon. You can find me on X at Brand Mystical. You can find me on Instagram and Threads. That may also change. At Brennan Blue, but mostly you can find me on Blue Sky at Brennan Miller. And on YouTube at Page Turners They Were Not.
And you can find me on Twitch and Twitter at CIngle1984. But as always, we end every episode. Kapla! And live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.